Well, hey there, my farmer friends. I'm back. It's Corinna, back from spring break. Hope you guys are doing well. I've missed you guys. Let me check into my group on my tablet here so that I can see who is joining me live and make sure that my head's not chopped off. No, I'm good. I'm good. Awesome. Hope you guys are doing great. I had a really terrific week off with my kids. We went to Hocking Hills. I don't know if you guys know where that is in Ohio. It's a state park area for 3 days, and as luck would have it, my youngest son decided to start barfing on the day we arrived, so I actually spent a lot of time in the hotel helping my little guy feel better. So it's kind of a bummer when your farmer vacation that you don't get much of doesn't go the way you planned. But we still found a way to make those kids hike. Even if they were feeling sick, I'm like, no, you're gonna hike. So, but we're back, we're refreshed, we're doing good. And today's topic is going to be all about customer onboarding strategies. And I want to start out by telling you guys a story. Please let me know if you're here. I see that 3 of you are here, but I can't tell who it is. So say hi. So I want to start out by telling a story that kind of illustrates this point today. Why is customer onboarding such a big deal, and well, let's start with what is it first. Customer onboarding is the process by which you get your new customers, especially your new customers in your CSA, acclimated to your program. You get them orienteered to how things work. You share the logistics with them. They know what's going to happen. They feel prepared so that when week 1 hits and they get their first box, it isn't their first rodeo. You know, they kind of know what's going to happen and they don't feel completely clueless. So having some kind of a strategy or a process for onboarding them before you even begin is what we're going to talk about today. And I did not always do this. In my early years of CSA, I didn't have a great strategy for this. I just sort of sent them all a little note right before we began, and I didn't really go into a lot of details. And over time, I slowly added on layers, and it's gotten a lot better in terms of my strategy. And I've seen a big result in my customers. I've seen heard a lot of feedback from them that it's a good thing, and I see them being more engaged. They feel better prepared. They're excited. So that's why I feel like this is an important thing, especially for you guys who are new to CSA. If you're just thinking about starting a CSA or in year 1 or 2, and you don't have a plan for this, I want to challenge you today to kind of think through what your customer onboarding strategy could be like. So I want to start out by just telling a story which illustrates this point, why customer onboarding is so important. Because, I don't know, I think it was 4 years ago, my husband and I, we got an equipped grant to build a high tunnel, and we ordered a giant high tunnel from a particular company, and they're a great company. They have since given us a second high tunnel. But the first time around, when we ordered it, it arrived on the back of a giant wagon. We took all the pieces off and kind of left it in a big pile, inventoried it, make sure it was all there, and they left. And we didn't really get started working on it to assemble it until, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 weeks later. We had a buddy come out here from Chicago to help us do it. And we ran into a problem almost immediately because there was an instruction page, but it was like, I think it was like 1 page, and it was just like a picture of what it should look like with sort of the pieces and arrows pointing. And that was kind of the gist of it. And if there was an instruction manual beyond that, we never saw it. And so our friend who was helping us, he's pretty savvy when it comes to putting things together. And it was incredibly frustrating for him because he was supposed to do that for 3 or 4 days. That was his job as sort of the foreman of that project. And he didn't have good plans to help him do the job. And we were together, well, I wasn't because I'm clueless about that, but my husband and Nick were looking at it and doing the best they could, trying to work things out. And they made a lot of mistakes, had to take things apart, put them back together. And I remember the frustration we felt that we just didn't feel like we were given good instructions. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know how this was all going to work. And looking back on that now, I see that that is a good example of an onboarding strategy that wasn't quite what the customer needed. Now we gave feedback, and we got a second one from them, and the problem is no longer there. They have fixed that, and so yay for them. But I want to tell you this story because I think it illustrates a really important principle. We think, when you purchase a high ticket item from Amazon or wherever you go and get it, sometimes, well, if you're my husband, you actually don't read the instruction manual and you just try to figure it out. But like an Instant Pot, for example, like I have to read the instructions to feel safe learning how to use that. And I think that when it comes to a CSA product, which is a little bit confusing, people don't even know what the word CSA even means, and they're not sure what to expect. They don't know what's going to be in their box, or they don't know really how they're going to use the food. They don't exactly know how pickup works. There are a lot of questions, and they just shelled out a bunch of money. So if you can be prepared and kind of engineer a process that helps them be ready for the first box, they're going to feel a lot better about their purchase. And that customer experience from the get-go is going to be a very positive one. Now contrast that to a CSA that has no onboarding strategy, and people just kind of show up and wing it, and they might make it through and it'll be okay, but it's not going to be what it could be if you took the time to put together a strategy to onboard people. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. Why onboarding matters. I'm going to go through a couple of tips there, and then I'm going to just kind of dive in. I'm going to try to make this training done in like 30 minutes because I have to go get my kids from school today. So I'm highly motivated to make these trainings shorter. But I do want to cover, first of all, why customer onboarding is important. Number one, it makes the customer feel in control, right? They don't know what's going on. And when you give them this roadmap and these step-by-step things that are going to happen, it kind of alleviates some of the confusion, and it makes them feel like I know what's going on. And that is really powerful for a customer to experience that. They're going to know what to expect, and no one can ever tell them, they can never say to you later, oh, I didn't know about that. Because you'd be like, well, I actually told you, several times in many different ways. It also is helpful to have an onboarding process because then it holds you accountable, because you are going to make some promises in this process of letting them know what to expect, and then they can hold you accountable to that. It's going to make you make sure that you do certain things so that they have a good experience. I also have found that it creates a lot of hype for the season. When I begin this process of teaching them stuff right before the season begins, like in the 2 weeks before we start, and I kind of start dripping information out, they start to get into a frenzy. They get really excited. They're like, oh my gosh, it's coming. So it's an opportunity to grow enthusiasm and hype for your season. And I feel like you're missing a huge opportunity just for that reason alone if you don't have an onboarding strategy. And plus it just creates really goodwill. I mean, the customer service piece is huge. If you remember if you've watched my video about the customer value journey, I keep talking about the excite phase, the middle part of that journey. There are many phases that a customer goes through when they first become aware of you all the way to becoming a raving fan. And if in that excite phase, which is right after they purchase your product, you have an opportunity to get them excited. And the way that you do that is partly by equipping them and teaching them, showing them how this process of CSA is going to work, the logistics, making them feel in control, know what's going on. You're going to make sure, in short, that they know how to use it. Okay, so there are a lot of reasons why customer onboarding is important, and all the great companies do this. In fact, every now and then I get a product from somewhere, and I open up the box, and there will be something inside that's just this beautiful, piece of how to use this, and it's like well designed, and I'm like, wow, they didn't have to do this, and that can just like really impress a customer if you do something that go above and beyond what they're expecting. Okay, so also just remember that because CSA is such a big ticket item, it's even more important that you have onboarding because they're spending a lot of money. This is a big investment. They may have buyer's remorse, and the minute that you have a process in place and you start showing them, I'm gonna walk you through how this works, it relieves that buyer's remorse. It takes away the stress and the feelings of dis-ease. All right, so what goes in your onboarding strategy? So in order to figure that out, here are the questions that I ask myself as I put them together. Number one, what are the logistics that your customer needs to know in order to feel prepared for week one? Okay, just logistics. Let's just talk about that. Like, where do you pick up your box? You know, what does the box look like? What are some of the questions they may be forced to ask that first time they come and get the box? Are they going to be faced with a decision that they're not prepared, to face? I remember one year I would bring extras like retail stuff, and they could buy fruit on the site or honey or maple syrup. And I learned one year that people came that first week and they didn't realize they could buy extra stuff, so they didn't have cash, and they were kind of ticked off. And so I'm like, I got to make sure I tell people that so that they come prepared. Things like that. What are those logistics, the process of picking up the box that first week that they need to know about? How can you minimize their confusion? That is another question that I ask. I try to get inside the head of my customer, especially a rookie, and think, okay, what do they need to know? What do they absolutely need to know before they show up? What's going to make them feel better, feel good about this decision? I also think about what are the most frequently asked questions that I get. And you all know what those are. You have probably got them a short list in your head right now. And I try to make sure that my customer onboarding strategy addresses all of those, just so that I don't have to constantly answer them through email, 20 million times. So if you can counteract that and be proactive on the front end, and put that into your strategy, your onboarding strategy, it will save you a lot of time. And then another question I ask myself is, what do I want them to do every week? What are some of those rituals that I want? I want my product to become something that actually gets into their life, that becomes a part of the ritual of their lives. It becomes a habit. And if I can make that happen, wow, now I have become very powerful in their lives, right? I'm really impacting them. So I try to think about, what do I want them to do every single week? What do I want to ritualize? What do I want to turn into a habit for them? Okay? Like an example of that would be, I want all of my customers to get into the habit of watching my live video unboxing on Tuesday nights. I want them all to do that. And so what do I have to do to make sure that that happens? How do I communicate that? Do I have to make sure I show up and have a quality broadcast? I mean, there's certain things that I make sure happen. Okay, so the very first thing that I want to encourage you to do as you're building out your onboarding strategy, and I have a feeling that probably many of you already do this, is you should at the very least have a CSA handbook, all right, a written document where all of this stuff is written down. And the handbook for me is like a manual. It's my source of truth, the one place where I put all the details. I mean, the details are in that document. So I write that first and I put that together, and then I kind of spiral and pull some things out of that to create some other strategies later. But the handbook, and I'm kind of curious if you have a handbook, why don't you just say, yep, I have a handbook. I just am curious how many of you do that. Because I have a feeling that most farmers at least start there. And when I first began CSA, I didn't actually have a handbook either. I didn't do that until I think year 3. And my first handbook was ridiculously long because I'm a little long-winded, as you probably know. And I have since shortened it, but I do put all my details in there. So here are some of the things that I put in my manual. I'm just going to go through the categories real quick. I talk about things like, when does pickup start? I talk about how the pickup process works. So I walk them through step by step what it looks like when you show up, what's going to happen, what's the staff going to say, what happens after you get your box. If you allow your customers to customize your box, like we don't do that, but I would definitely put that in there. Explain how that process works or how they set that up online. When are the site times? So it's the one place where people can go to find the location and the times of pickup. And I have that, way up high on one of the first few pages. I talk about how I plan to communicate that with them each week, what my expectations are. So I'm really clear with them that I say, listen, I communicate with you through the Facebook group and through email. If you're not checking those places every week, you cannot get angry at me if you don't know what's going on. If we decide to take a week off of vacation and you show up for your box and we're not there, and then you get mad, I'm like, well, I tell you these things. in email and in the Facebook groups. You need to be checking those at least once a week. So I spell that out in this handbook so that we're all clear. Here's how we communicate. Likewise, how they communicate with me. Like if you have a complaint or an issue, this is how I prefer that you share that with me. Don't put it in the Facebook group. Contact me directly, or please let me know when your quality concerns are there. I want to know that, and here's how we'll deal with the issue. I go through the what if scenarios. So, like, what if you forget to pick up your box? What if you go on vacation? What if, or can you send a substitute? And how does that work? Can I switch my site from week to week? I also review things like the disclaimers, which should be in everyone's membership agreement, right? Like you need to be upfront with people that, hey, I want to make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. When you buy into a CSA, you're saying that you've got my back. So if we've got a really crappy year, you're not going to abandon me, right? And I basically am really blunt about that. Like, hey, we're going to have every year, we're going to have an issue. I can promise you, I'm going to have one crop that fails. I've had one crop fail every year, like not, produce the way I wanted to. And so just setting that expectation in the manual on the front end. I also talk about a disclaimer like the early weeks of the box, they're lighter than normal. I talk about that because I learned the hard way that people weren't expecting that. They thought they were going to get a massively full box every single week of the season. So now I tell them that up front. I talk about how they can reach us, so I make sure they have our cell phones. I tell them they can message us. I tell them our emails. And the best way, and the circumstances that I want them to reach out to me. So I don't want them to abuse my cell phone and call me over every little thing, but if they're going to be late or they're going to miss something, miss their pickup, hey, that's when you can use my cell phone. Payment questions go in the handbook, where to send payment if you're not doing it online, when payment is due, and your refund policy, make sure that that's in there too. Be really clear about, can people drop out? If they're not happy, how does that all work? I also have a section on storing produce. I don't go into super detail, but I do mention it's important that you learn how to store your produce. Make sure you do learn that. Here's a resource for you to look at to learn it. I talk about, can you volunteer and how to sign up to volunteer. Farm events and how they work. I don't usually include my actual schedule in the handbook. I put that somewhere else, but I do just say we have farm events, they're included, this is how it works, this is how you sign up, etc. I talk about what the newsletter, the weekly communication from me looks like, what they can expect to get from me each week, what's included, when it comes out, how to clean the bins. So we have totes that are plastic and they are reusable every week, so we ask them to wash those out. Okay, so that's just like big glance. I looked at my handbook before I prepared this today and I just kind of went through the headings and wrote out what were the things that I covered. So I'm curious if you have a handbook too, does something come to mind off your head that I didn't bring up that you think might be included in some people's handbooks? You can type that out in the comments right now. I'm trying to see if I can see any of your comments and I'm not watching them. I don't see any coming up. Oh, there they are, 5 comments. Oh, all right, hang on. I don't see any coming up. Oh, there they are, 5 comments. Now I can hear myself. Let me turn myself off. All right, hang on. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, Julie says no handbook per se, but I believe I've included all this in our contract. Okay, so you have an actual contract, Julie. Awesome. So you have something that you can work with, that you can point to. All right, so here are just a few handbook tips if you're putting one together for the first time. I recommend after you write it that you send it out 3 weeks before you begin. And the reason I say 3 weeks and not like in February is because someone who signs up in February, you send them this welcome email, which is a welcome drip campaign. I have a whole other training about the welcome, what do I call it? The welcome email series. And that's what I drip out. As soon as someone signs up, they get like a series of 5 emails that just kind of gives them some freebies and tells them, hey, you did the right thing. I'm really glad you did this, and so forth. And I have a training that kind of talks about what's in that. But this onboarding sequence is different. This is really walking people through the handbook. This is walking them through the logistics of how the CSA will actually work. And the reason why I like to send that a little closer to the start date CSA is because if I tell them in February, they're never going to remember. They're going to forget all this stuff. So this is stuff that I want top of mind, and I want them to get excited, right? I drip it out. I start to share it in the weeks before we begin because it creates a lot of momentum. So if you give that information too early, they'll forget. Okay, the second tip is that I put this CSA handbook in a lot of different places, and I don't just send it out one time. All right, I want it to be easy to find. So first of all, I will email it to all my members at the beginning of the season as part of the onboarding email sequence that I send out. I also put it on my website inside of my CSA, my Insiders CSA training library. So it's kind of like my membership site where I'm putting all my cheat sheets and ebooks and video trainings so that they can go find it there. I haven't done this yet, but I have a pinned post, several pinned posts at the top of my private Facebook group page, and I have one section that's all about like resources and tools, and I will be putting that in there so that they can go and find it there. You could also put it on your frequently asked questions page on your website, just have it as a link. So if you have a lead and someone that's checking out your CSA and they have some questions about how it works, they could actually download your entire manual and read it to kind of feel better about their decision. And I can only imagine if I read something that was 5 pages and really detailed from a farmer, I'd be like, dang, all right, these guys are serious. They're organized and they've got this stuff together. And I would feel really good about that. I also like having it around when somebody asks a customer service question that I know the answer is in the handbook, right? Like I'll get questions from people about, hey, can I come and pick up my box on a different day if I miss my box? And I'll respond and I'll say, here's what our policy is, and then I'll just kind of add in the email. I'll be like, and here is the customer handbook, which has all the answers to our frequently asked questions in it. I sent it out at the beginning of the year. It might be a good idea for you to read it. All right, so sometimes it's really helpful to have that because you can then use it to handle customer service issues, right? You can say, hey, here's just a reminder, take a look at it, it's all in there, and they learn real quick that, oops, I was supposed to read that and I didn't, and it's all there. The third tip is that I fill my handbook with all the details, all right? So I'm going to talk at the end here about other ways that I onboard my customers, and I don't go into super nitty-gritty detail in those, but in the handbook, it's all there. It's my one source of truth. Every little tiny detail that I can think of is spelled out in there. The policies and procedures, right? So I also do a 3-part video series to kind of chunk it out. It's one of the ways I'm going to talk about at the end. But I don't do all the little nitty-gritty details from the handbook in that video series. I can't. That's just too much. But this is sort of the place to go. If people have a question, I'm training them, like, go check the handbook first because it probably has the answer to it. And I'm going to attach my version of my handbook in the comments here below after the video so that you can see it. You can use it as a template if you want to give you ideas for what could be in yours. And then finally, my 4th tip for the handbook is to pay attention to the formatting, okay? Because you and I know that when somebody hands you a giant policy and procedures handbook, you probably don't read it either, right? You skim it, you scan it. So you want to build this handbook in such a way that there's a fighting chance that your people will actually look at it. So pay attention to breaking up the text, right? Don't make giant paragraphs. I try to keep them, into 3 or 4 sentences if I can. I put headings that are bigger and bolder. I try to break up, the topics so that people will their eye will skip down the page and find the thing that they're interested in. The flow of the topics should make sense. And I actually had to make this adjustment this year to my handbook from last year because I noticed that some of the things that were kind of 3/4 of the way down really belonged after a section, kind of on the first page. And I'd sort of, for whatever reason, they were in the same general topic and they had gotten split apart. So there should be a general rhyme and a reason. Your most important things should be on the first 2 pages, and the stuff that isn't all that important is on the end. And then I try to keep it under 5 pages in a PDF document. If it's too long, people will not read it, right? And in general, you want to write it in such a way so that it is scannable. People don't read anymore, they scan. So make it easy for them to figure out what that paragraph is about, what's that one going to be about, because they may not have to read a paragraph about payment details if they've already sent in their payment, right? So I do also just want to say that your newbies, your rookies, I'm almost sure that like 90% of them are going to read your handbook, all right? The people who maybe won't read your handbook are going to be the ones who've been with your CSA for a long time, because they're going to be like, oh, I already know how this works. So that's kind of the danger if you've been doing a CSA for a while and you've never had a handbook and you're going to make one now. Trying to get those people to read it when they're like, I already know how this works. I don't need to read your instruction manual. So I have that problem too with, a 10-year CSA. So I try to pull out, every year there's a few things that change, and I try to pull those out and I highlight those to make sure that my veteran customers, know the important changes. And those usually go in an email where the CSA handbook is linked up. I'll be like, have a few bullet points in the email copy itself that are read. Or I'll highlight those in a video in the Facebook group just so people know. Like this year, we changed our Port Clinton pickup site from a Wednesday to a Thursday. And I want to make sure that people know that who have signed up for the Port Clinton site. So they are getting many emails before the season begins. I'm going to do a video that talks about that so that they're not surprised that, oh, I didn't realize you were switching the day, okay? Okay, so there's the handbook, but then I want you to think beyond handbook. If you are so inclined, if you've never, if you're just starting, just do a handbook the first year. Don't make it complicated, okay? But as you grow as a CSA, I want to challenge you to maybe come up with additional ways that you can do this customer onboarding, because I have added new layers and I've gotten really good feedback about them. So. The handbook PDF is the primary piece that onboards your people. But like I said, not everyone reads that, right? Not everyone likes to read documents. And so I tried to create another way for people to get this information that didn't require reading. And so I don't know, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, I created a video that was basically a slideshow. So I put it on, did I put it? Yeah, I think I put it on PowerPoint. Now I can't remember. I made a video of slides, and then I recorded myself kind of reading the handbook in the background, okay? But I tried not to sound like I was reading. I was saying it in my own voice. And then the pictures didn't necessarily align with what I was reading. They were pictures of my farm, but it's not like I had a picture of the pickup site while I was talking about pickup site times. I just had a slideshow of beautiful pictures. So I did that one year. The problem is that it took me almost 20 minutes to read the manual. So it was a long video, but I did have people tell me that they really enjoyed that ability just to be able to listen to the instructions while they were somewhere else, right? They didn't have to actually read. And they liked looking at the pictures. So I did that for the last 3 years. This year, this is the first year that I'm trying a new thing. I'm doing a 3-part video series. I've already produced them, and these are 3 5-minute videos that I broke up into pieces. I looked at the content in my handbook, and I decided what is really important. Like, there's a lot of nitty-gritty stuff in here that's super detailed, but what are the most important things that people have to know? And I am going to break that up into 3 categories, and I created a video. So I stood in front of a camera like I do now. I've gotten a lot of practice because I'm doing videos all the time now. And it was just me in my kitchen like this, standing in front of the camera, and I just spoke to the camera on, the 2 or 3 topics per video. And then I took those right off my iPad, cut off the ends of them in iMovie, and I was done in like 20 minutes, right? So with each video. Like it took, I think each video was 5 minutes, and then it took me 2 minutes to cut the ends off, and then I uploaded it to YouTube, and now I have the link. So that was I'm excited to see how that goes. What I plan to do with that is drip that out to my members and say, hey, you can either read the handbook and get it all done in one sitting, or you can watch my 3-part video series, and here are the 3 links. So that's another option to think about, because I think people respond really well to the voice, and they'll see your face, and you just have that engagement that you can't really get with paper. Another idea that you could consider is doing a Facebook Live video like I'm doing right now, where you just have some notes and you get in front of your audience. If you have your audience in a private Facebook group, you can break up the content that way and just say, hey guys, you know, for the next week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to pop in and I'm going to kind of share with you the logistics of how the CSA works. I'm going to break it up. It's going to be like a 10-minute talk each time, and you can then just share, and people can ask questions if they want, I suppose, too, if you want to have engagement. So I may even add that to the process just to make sure my people have many ways to hear this information, right? I want to make sure my rookies have an opportunity to learn how to use the box, right? How to show up and pick up their box and handle all their questions. Okay, and then obviously I have an email series, because I'm the email girl, right? I have used an email drip campaign for the last 2 years. It's been really effective. This year I shortened it so it's not as long, and I am doing 7 days. I know you're probably like, how many days was it? It used to be 15 emails, which is just ridiculous. Don't do that. I have 7 days, and I'm doing them every day for an entire week, and it's going to start, I think, 2 weeks before the CSA begins. And that very first email is going to have, hey, I'm starting this process teaching you what you need to know to get ready, and here's the handbook link if you just want to read it, then you don't have to watch any of these video or emails that I'm sending, or here's a 3-part video series if you'd rather watch it that way, or you can open up your emails for the next 7 days because I'm going to share the information with you that way, okay? So I'm doing lots of different ways of onboarding my customers. You don't have to do them all. But I wanted to share with you a few different ways you could approach it. You could build an email sequence that drips out, every day or every other day in those final weeks before you begin. You could do a Facebook Live video series where you either give it all in one big video or you break it up into multiple chunks. You could create a produced 3-part video series that goes onto YouTube and people can find it through a link in your email that you send. Or you could just keep it simple and do a written handbook, okay? Or you could do a slideshow like I did long ago. So when you build these, whatever you decide to do, if you decide to kind of go above and beyond, keep it simple, not too overwhelming. So not 15 emails, I learned my lesson. Again, I try not to put every single detail in those particular methods. The handbook is where the details are, and I think that's where I made my mistake with the emails, is I tried to basically put all the handbook stuff into an email. I'm like, you know what, no, I don't need to do that. If they want to go find the nitty-gritty details, I'll tell them you can find this in the handbook, right? I'm just going to give them the big brush strokes. So I also recommend breaking it up into bite-sized pieces and really ask yourself that question, what do they really need to know? There's a lot of stuff that they could know, but what do they really need to know just to get through their first couple weeks, right? Don Miller, who is a social media marketing guru that I follow, he has a tagline that says, if you confuse, you lose. So his big push is like, you got to keep your marketing message simple, simple, simple. Don't burn people's brain cells. And I totally think that that is the case for this too. You need to share this information, right? But you also don't want to overwhelm and give so much that people just shut down and can't remember it. Now, I do want to say that I started out with a handbook for probably the first 4 years. Well, I didn't do one the first 2 years. And then I had a handbook for like 4 years only. And I found that people weren't really reading it anymore. And so that's why I started exploring, using video or slideshow, because I was trying to use my voice. I thought people might listen to it if it was, done audio. And I got a lot of really good feedback in the years that I have done something different. It was almost like people just said that they found it easier to listen to, and I just got a sense that they felt impressed, like I had gone above and beyond their expectations. I could have just sent a manual, but the fact that I tried to make it more engaging, they noticed, and a lot of them said something about it. So this is an opportunity to kind of make your brand look like you're doing everything you can to surprise and delight your customer, right? So I'm also going to attach the link to my 3-part video series. They're actually unlisted or private. I think they're private. I tagged them a certain way or in YouTube so that you can only find them if you have the URL. Okay, and then finally, before I let you go today, I want you to think about above and beyond just logistics. Okay, what can you do to onboard your customer so that they know how to use your food? All right, and this is, I think, my secret sauce. I did a whole a paid course about how to develop a private Facebook group, and I taught in that course what you would teach your new customers so that they feel empowered and know what to do with their food. So this is kind of what I do really well. I really feel like this is the reason so many people came back to my CSA last year, because we did above and beyond, and we didn't just give them, here's the logistics for how to use it, pick up your box and whether you can send a substitute or whatever, but we had intensive training tutorials every week. And now I have this incredible resource library of video tutorials for every vegetable, ebooks for every vegetable, exit strategies, blah, blah, blah. Taught people how to store everything. So people who walked through that process with us really felt like we took good care of them. So that is a great example of a company or a CSA that's trying to onboard their customer beyond just the logistics of how a CSA works. It's like, I want to teach you how to be successful using my product. Because you have to remember, a lot of your rookies think they know how to use local food, but when they finally get arugula and collard greens, they don't. They don't know what to do with that. And they don't know what to do with cabbage besides make coleslaw, So there's an opportunity here for you to show up and guide them through a process of how to use your product. It excites them, they grow, they develop, and they become loyal because they're growing with you. And they come back the next year because they're like, wow, she changed my life. She didn't just give me a box of food, she taught me how to use it, right? So I want you to kind of brainstorm some ways that you could onboard your customer in terms of helping them use the food. And we begin our strategy for teaching that stuff 2 to 3 weeks before the CSA begins. And the goal of that is to give them some actual tools in their toolkit so that when they get their first box of food, they're not like, what the hell do I do with this? They've already learned a few strategies before so that they're ready to go. In fact, they can't wait to try some of the things that we've taught them. So usually I would say even 3 to 4 weeks before, we're going to begin in May, middle of May, we're going to start training our customers in our private Facebook group on some of these elements of our roadmap to CSA success. So ask yourself questions like, think like a rookie. If you don't have time, I really encourage you to call your CSA masters, people who've been with you a long time. I have a whole training about telephone interviews and interviewing your customers, what kinds of questions to ask them. If you can do that with 10 customers, you'll figure out real quick what the stuff was that they learned to become masters, and that's going to help you know what to teach. But you want to think about where's my newbie, my rookie at? What kind of person are they like? What do they know and what don't they know? What do they think they know and what don't they know? What are their frustrations going to be? What are the speed bumps going to be for them? Are they going to do they know how to store their food? Do you know which vegetables need to get stored properly first, or you're screwed, right? Do they know what to do when they start getting tons of kale and they hate kale or other greens, right? Like when those first boxes that are just all greens, like have you prepared them? Do they know how to handle that so that they don't get frustrated? I know we have problem vegetables. What are the problem child vegetables? Things like eggplant, jalapenos, arugula, collards, turnips. Those are things that people wouldn't probably pick on their own. And so we need to teach them what to do with that so it doesn't just end up in the compost pile. So another example is roasted cabbage steaks. Like I taught people how to make roasted cabbage steaks, and it's now one of the favorite things in my group. They're like, oh my God, I didn't know you could do this. And they're amazing, but people don't know they can roast cabbage. So you have to remember, as farmers, we have something called the curse of knowledge. And that's the case for any entrepreneur, any business owner. They know everything about their business, right? And so sometimes you fall into this mindset, you forget that your customers don't know it all. And it's going to take them a while to get there. And so you just talk and you sort of assume that they know how to use your product when they don't. And so you have to always fight the curse of knowledge and keep reminding yourself, where are my customers on their journey? How can I be equipping them and training them? What can I teach them so that they learn how to use my food, so that I develop and grow them? So Just think through the eyes of a newbie and try to craft, like 4 or 5 things in your first maybe 3 months that you could teach them. Maybe if you don't want to get in front of them on a video because you're scared out of your mind to do that, then maybe you can create a little 1-page guide that gives them some things they can do with peppers when they're coming out of your ears. Give them a list of 10 things. And then just add that in with their box or send it to them in an email. Come up with other ways that you can help support your members and onboard them into this experience, okay? So how can you give them a quick win? That's my other question I just want to ask you to think about as you're developing this onboarding process for how to use the food. I like to ask myself, what is a quick win? I try to teach things that are quick wins on the front end of the season before we begin, because that affirms their decision that they bought this. It makes them feel like, oh my gosh, this was totally worth it. If this is all I learned this year, it was worth joining the CSA. I have a lot of people that have that experience when I teach them how to make their own vegetable broth using a freezer scrap bag. They're like, what? I had no idea. And so that's a great example of a quick win. It's very easy, and it helps them feel like they're not wasting food, and they get something out the other end. And people never have to buy vegetable broth again, so they're saving money. So quick win, right? So try to identify what those things are. Okay. So I teach that information, and I kind of have like a roadmap, like I said, a process that I brainstormed, that I put through. It's actually based on the research of my masters, and I've identified, what people need to learn first. I figured out the sequence, what matters, what has to get taught first, what isn't so important until the end. And I sort of have that sort of mapped out, and I follow it more or less as I go through the season, and I teach that information in my private Facebook group. But you could just teach it on your normal Facebook page too, if you want. All right, so I also have a beginner's guide to CSA, which is kind of like a playbook ebook that I wrote about 2-3 months ago. It's a beginner's guide to CSA, lessons from our CSA from our master members. And so that's an ebook that I make available for purchase to my customers as well, so they can buy that, and it kind of has the whole roadmap listed in there. So if they don't want to take the time to watch all my videos and learn it all the long way, they can have it in like one, I think it's like 50 pages, quick scannable guide where they can kind of see it all laid out for them and just sort of figure out, oh, I need to learn that, now I need to learn that, and this is important and this is important. So I wanted to make that particular resource available to you if you're interested in kind of knowing, if you're interested in trying to develop an onboarding strategy for this piece, not just the logistics, but like, hey, what would I actually try to teach my customers? What's important? And if you're curious to know what the research results were from my research with my CSA masters, you can also purchase that ebook. You can go to sharedlegacyfarms.com/guide. That's my sales page for it, and you kind of see the table of contents and what all is in it and see if it might be worth it for you. But that is a resource that I actually wrote for CSA members so that they can grab it and help them kind of accelerate their process through CSA and kind of skip some of those rookie mistakes that happen. It's all sort of laid out in the book, like what do you really need to know, what do you need to learn first, don't make this mistake, etc. So if that is something that you think would be helpful for you so that you can use it sort of as a lesson plan to help guide your process this year, by all means, head to that sales page. You can grab it too. It's at sharedlegacyfarms.com/guide. If you like it, you could send your CSA members there and they could grab it, but I wasn't really making it so that you guys could send your customers there, but it's more it's written for my CSA. You guys probably have slightly different variations, but I think it would be helpful for some of you to just kind of take a look at what the topics are. Even if you just go to the sales page and see the table of contents of the book, that might give you some ideas of what you can teach. All right? So that's it for today. Let me see if there are any comments or questions. Beth is here. Lynn says, we have been making flowcharts for each process of our CSA program. Yep, good. I was thinking of creating a simple quiz, says Kim, for them to fill out about the important details, and then do a drawing for a value-added item out of the completed quizzes. Oh, so like you make them read something, and then you have like a test, a quiz to make sure that they get the right answers. I love that. That's a great idea. One idea that I I have a Facebook Messenger account, and I have a product called ManyChat. I'm starting to play around with bots, with chat bots. And one idea that I've heard as I've been learning is for, you can actually build a quiz with your chat bot, right? So you could technically, it's making me think that I could have people learn stuff and then I could say, hey, go see if you know your CSA trivia, and I could send them, to a link onto Messenger and have them take a quiz through Messenger. And then I actually end up with a Messenger subscriber and I can promote through that channel as well. But that's a really good idea to use a quiz. I like that a lot, Cam. Good job. All right, well, that's all that I have for today. Your call to action is, if you don't have a handbook, I want you to make one. Even if it's just 2 pages, keep it simple if you have to. And you can use my template to help guide you. I'll make sure I attach that in the notes. And again, if you are interested in grabbing the beginner's guide to CSA lessons from our master members, you can get that playbook at sharedlegacyfarms.com/guide. It is $7 if you're interested in checking that out. It is an ebook, but that would kind of give you a good strategy and game plan for where to start based on real people, a real farm that's done the work. So for next week, I'm going to try a new thing. I just want to make you aware. I'm going to try doing a Q&A session. I've been getting more and more emails and messages, Facebook messages from people with random questions. And so before I dive into like a whole nother topic, I thought I would just see if people have questions that they want to ask. So I'm going to put a post up this week in the group where you can ask any question you want. Just put it in the comments and I'll kind of assemble them all, pick out the ones that I can answer. And I'll try to create an episode next week that goes through those. I'll probably have one very short little gem of marketing wisdom on the front end too. If I don't get any questions from people, well then I'll just make up a topic like I usually do every week. So, hey guys, thanks so much for being here this week, and have a great weekend. I'm looking forward to some time with my family. So good being with you guys. Take care. See ya. Bye.